Imagine saving up, I don't know, like $3,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for most people.
Right. And you take 2 weeks of your hard-earned vacation time, you pack your bags, and you fly across the world with a group of friends from your church.
Sounds pretty standard so far.
It does,
Yeah.
right? And your goal is to paint this desperately underfunded, run-down orphanage.
Okay.
So you spend days sweating in the humidity, rolling this bright, cheerful yellow paint onto these drab concrete walls.
Doing the hard work.
Exactly. You take pictures with the kids, you cry, you feel this profound sense of purpose, and you fly home feeling like you actually made a dent in the universe.
That's a powerful feeling.
But then, and here's the catch, imagine finding out that a week after your plane took off, the local staff at that exact same orphanage quietly brought in their own people to completely repaint those walls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Why? Because you used the wrong type of paint for that specific climate.
Oh, no.
It started peeling immediately, and they only let you do it in the first place so they wouldn't hurt your feelings.
Man, that is just a gut punch.
It really is. That right there is the hidden, deeply uncomfortable reality of global short-term missions.
It perfectly encapsulates the collision, between our desire to be the hero and the actual messy reality of global charity.
Right.
Because we want our good intentions to be visible. We love when things are easily categorized with a clear beginning, middle, and end.
We want the before and after photos.
Exactly. But the moment you step into the world of cross-cultural volunteerism, that clean equation it shatters.
It really does. And welcome to the deep dive. We are incredibly excited you are joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Because today we're unpacking a massive, really thought-provoking stack of research and field analysis, all centered around one core theme, which is the truth about short-term missions.
And it is a dense topic.
It is. So our mission for you on this deep dive is to get past the glossy brochure.
Right, the promotional materials.
Yeah, exactly. If you are someone who loves learning and you want to understand the invisible psychological and economic dynamics of global charity.
Especially the multi-billion-dollar ecosystem of Christian short-term mission trips.
Yes. Then this is the ultimate exploration of good intentions versus good strategy.
It's going to be eye-opening.
We are going to explore how a trip that is genuinely meant to heal can accidentally cause generational harm.
And more importantly, how we can redesign that deep human desire to help into a force for mutual lasting growth.
Right, because the tension at the center of all this research is just profound.
It really is. I mean, if you look at it purely on the surface, short-term missions look completely positive.
Absolutely. Needs are met, right?
Yeah, people travel, roofs get built, medical supplies are handed out, and the faith of the traveler is awakened. Human hearts are moved.
But underneath all of that highly visible energy is a question that, honestly, most organizations are terrified to ask out loud.
They really are.
And that question is, do these trips actually build lasting discipleship? Or do they quietly, slowly create toxic dependency?
Yeah. Are we strengthening local leaders in the places we visit, or are we just accidentally bulldozing them?
Bulldozing them with our good intentions.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. A short-term trip can easily be the most inspiring, emotionally resonant experience of a person's life.
Without a doubt.
It can energize an entire community back home. But that same trip can subtly train everyone involved to measure success by activity instead of actual fruit.
Which is a huge distinction.
Yeah.
Activity versus fruit.
Right. We start measuring by emotional impact instead of lasting transformation.
And that means we need to start by looking at why this is so appealing in the first place.
Yeah, let's go there.
Because if we're going to understand the missteps of this entire industry, we have to acknowledge the genuine good.
We have to validate the people going.
Right. We have to look at the psychological payoff of actually getting on that airplane.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the research is very clear that it is not anti-mission trip.
Not at all.
In fact, it explicitly states that short-term travel is a gift. It has this incredible power to shatter what the source material often calls provincial Christianity.
That's a great term.
It is. But wait, let's pause there for a second. Let's make sure we are all on the same page.
Sure.
When the research talks about provincial Christianity, what does that actually look like for someone just, sitting in the pews?
Think of it as a theological cul-de-sac.
Oh, cul-de-sac, okay.
Yeah. Provincial Christianity is a localized muddle. It's the assumption that the way you and your immediate neighbors practice faith, the way you view money, the way you understand suffering.
That your specific way is the only way.
Exactly. that your specific cultural experience is the universal standard.
Wow.
It's safe, it's predictable, and it's highly insulated.
So it's like praying for the world or the nations in this very vague, abstract way. Like,
Yeah.
God, please bless the poor people somewhere over there.
Yes, it's totally abstract. But when you travel, when your comfort is aggressively interrupted, that abstraction is destroyed.
It becomes real.
Very real. You suddenly see Christians worshiping with deep joy in a totally different language, perhaps under immense economic pressure or, political persecution.
Which is mind-blowing if you've never seen it.
Right. And that shatters your assumption. It shows the traveler that what they thought was spiritual maturity in their home country.
Might actually just be material comfort.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And the research uses a really crucial metaphor for this moment. It calls this kind of short-term trip a doorway.
A doorway, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Because God uses doorway moments all through history, right? Moses sees the burning bush. That's a massive doorway moment.
Definitely.
Paul gets blinded on the Damascus Road, another huge doorway moment.
Yeah.
It's an interruption designed to awaken someone and commission them for something greater.
That's the ideal. But here is the critical distinction. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a doorway is valuable strictly because it connects one space to another space.
Right, it's a transition.
The very architecture of a doorway implies passage, not permanence. You are meant to walk through it into a new room, a new way of living.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The danger, the trap that so many organizations fall into is mistaking the threshold for the destination itself.
Mistaking the threshold for the destination. I was trying to wrap my head around this trap earlier, and the best analogy I could come up with is an amusement park turnstile.
Oh, I like that. Tell me more.
So if you've ever been to a massive theme park, you know that feeling of walking up to the entrance gates.
Sure, the anticipation.
Right, the music is playing, you hand over your ticket, the scanner beeps, the light turns green, and you push through that heavy metal turnstile.
It's exciting.
It gives you this massive rush of thrill and anticipation. It is a fantastic feeling. But imagine if a person just kept walking through the entrance, turning around, exiting, and walking through the turnstile over and over and over again.
Just to feel that initial thrill.
Yes, just to get that dopamine hit of entering.
But they never actually ride the rides.
Exactly. They never explore the park. They never engage in the actual sustained activity the gate was leading to.
That is such a good analogy.
If walking through the doorway feels amazing and it provides a genuine spiritual awakening, the human instinct is just to replicate the doorway.
Because the doorway is easy to measure.
Right.
The initial thrill of the turnstile is the realization that the world is bigger than your cul-de-sac. But without deep discernment, that doorway experience morphs into an addiction.
An addiction to the travel itself.
Yes. The mission trip slowly becomes a machine for generating spiritual experiences for the people going.
It just becomes about us.
It gets locked onto the annual calendar.
Yeah.
The fundraising letters go out every spring. The matching T-shirts get printed. The youth group gets hyped up.
Oh, man, the matching T-shirts. Always.
Right. But nobody stops to ask what this machine is actually producing in the long run.
So the doorway is honored, but the home it was supposed to lead to is ignored.
Beautifully said.
The home being like a life of deepened local discipleship, sustained generosity, ongoing prayer for specific people.
All the quiet stuff.
Right. All of that remains totally unexplored because everyone is just focused on the next trip.
And that failure to move past the doorway leads to an enormous invisible toll.
Invisible to us, anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because while the visitors are busy enjoying the spiritual high of the turnstile, someone else is paying the price to keep that machine running.
Yeah. We need to look at the hidden costs.
We really do.
Let's get into those hidden costs, because I think this is where the traditional narrative really starts to unravel.
It gets uncomfortable here.
It does. Because when we think about the quote-unquote cost of a cross-cultural volunteer trip, our brains immediately go to the spreadsheet.
The budget.
Right. We think about the flights, the visas, the travel insurance, the hotel or compound fees, and maybe the bags of concrete or the medical supplies we are bringing.
We view the cost as entirely borne by the sender.
Yes. We think we're footing the whole bill. But the research argues that there is a massive, completely invisible labor cost that is entirely shouldered by the host community.
And it's a heavy burden.
And honestly, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
Because I think this is where a lot of people tuning in might get defensive. Imagine I'm part of a team. We are bringing 20 people who are willing to do manual labor for free.
Okay.
We raised $30,000 for building materials. We are pouring concrete for a new community center. Isn't the host community getting a pretty incredible deal out of this exchange?
I mean, we are bringing the money and the muscle. It
Exactly.
seems like a great deal on paper, but let's look at the actual missiological reality on the ground.
Okay, lay it on me.
By the way, missiology is just the study of how missions actually work in practice, the strategy, the theology, the real-world friction.
Right, the actual boots on the ground.
And the real-world friction here is logistics.
Logistics.
Think about what it takes to host 20 foreigners who do not speak the local language, do not understand the cultural norms, cannot drink the tap water,
Right.
and do not know the geography.
Oh, man. When you put it like that, someone has to manage all of that.
Exactly. Someone local has to coordinate secure housing. Someone has to arrange daily transportation.
Which takes hours.
Someone has to act as a translator for every single conversation, every set of instructions on the worksite.
I didn't even think about the translating part. That's nonstop.
It's exhausting. The host pastor or local leaders have to absorb constant daily disruptions to their own schedules. They have to secure the worksite so nobody gets hurt.
Because we don't know what we're doing half the time.
Right. And above all, they have to manage the visitor's itinerary so the visitors feel highly productive.
Oh, wow. They have to manufacture the experience.
They do.
So what is pitched as a short-term trip for the visitor, like a quick 2-week sprint, is actually a long-term, exhausting logistical nightmare for the host.
It is exhausting. And it produces a psychological dynamic that is critical to understand. The research calls it a concept called gratitude management.
Gratitude management. That sounds heavy.
It is very heavy.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, put yourself in the shoes of a local pastor in a developing nation.
Okay.
You are approached by a wealthy church from the West that wants to bring a team. Now, this church might also be the source of funding that keeps your local school open or pays your modest salary.
So there's a huge power dynamic.
Massive. You feel an immense, crushing obligation to accept this visiting team, even if you don't actually need them to pour concrete.
Because you can't say no to the people writing the checks.
Exactly. So you smile through your own fatigue. You bend over backward to accommodate their dietary needs, their schedule, their desire to take photos.
You manage them.
You manage their experience and constantly express profound gratitude. Because you are terrified that if you offend them, or if they don't feel like they, quote-unquote, save the day, the sending church will pull their funding.
Wow. So you are essentially turning the host church into a stage set.
Yes.
And the local believers are demoted to stagehands.
That's a tragic but accurate way to put it.
And the whole point of the production is just so the visiting team can feel like the stars of an adventurous spiritual drama.
Which is why the painted orphanage wall happens.
Right. The story from the beginning.
The host pastor knows the paint is wrong, but he also knows that telling the visitors no might cost his community their primary financial lifeline.
So he just lets it happen.
He lets them paint it, smiles for the camera, manages their gratitude, and then quietly fixes the mess after they leave.
That is just, it's heartbreaking, and it speaks to what the research calls the seduction of the visible.
Yes, the seduction of the visible.
We as human beings are so incredibly drawn to what can be seen, what can be measured, what can be photographed.
We love a metric.
We really do. We are obsessed with the tangible. We want the before and after photos of that painted wall to put in our newsletter back home.
It's deeply ingrained in us. And the research compares this desire to the ancient biblical story of the Israelites demanding the golden calf.
Oh, that's an intense comparison.
It is, but think about it. They were at the base of the mountain, Moses was gone, and they panicked. They couldn't handle the invisible, slow work of trusting God, so they demanded something tangible.
They needed to see it.
They said, give us a physical idol we can look at and touch. Our modern obsession with dramatic, photo-friendly mission trips is driven by the exact same impulse.
We want a golden calf.
We want visible, dramatic substitutes for the slow, unglamorous work of patient trust and invisible growth.
And it completely distorts how we view spirituality, doesn't it?
Completely.
The research points out that this culture romanticizes distance. It creates this subconscious hierarchy where crossing an international border becomes the ultimate badge of true significance.
Which is so dangerous. What happens when we elevate the dramatic, travel-based mission to the absolute top tier of the Christian experience?
It inevitably means that ordinary local faithfulness starts to look second-rate.
Exactly. The everyday stuff gets devalued.
Think about the mother who is patiently, day in and day out, teaching her kids how to pray.
Right.
Or the church elder who spends 6 months quietly mediating a bitter conflict between two neighbors.
Nobody's taking photos of that.
Or the person who just consistently shares their life and their faith with a coworker in the break room over a period of years. Suddenly, all of that feels small.
It feels mundane.
It doesn't get a slideshow on Sunday morning.
No, it doesn't.
But if you look at the life of Jesus, he spent almost the entirety of his earthly ministry in ordinary, unglamorous, highly localized places.
I was a local guy.
He didn't romanticize distance at all. He sanctified the local and the ordinary.
But when a community consistently rewards and applauds only the most visible, exotic forms of service, they lose their patience for the slow work that actually produces maturity.
It's boring.
It looks boring from the outside, and that impatience doesn't just harm the people going on the trip, it fundamentally alters the imagination and the capability of the host community.
Okay, so the visitors get their spiritual high from the turnstile, and the hosts get exhausted managing the logistics.
Right.
But if I'm playing devil's advocate again, a tired host pastor is just a short-term problem, right? He sleeps for a week after the team flies out and he recovers. What is the actual lasting damage here?
The lasting damage is the silent killer of all charitable work.
Which is?
Dependency.
Dependency, the slow creep.
Yes. And it is terrifying precisely because it rarely announces itself as a threat.
It doesn't look evil.
Not at all. Dependency doesn't show up looking like malice. It doesn't look like colonial domination. It arrives wearing the clothes of extreme kindness.
Wow.
It happens slowly, incrementally, over years. It occurs when outside teams are continually praised and celebrated for doing work that local believers were never actually given the chance to own for themselves.
So how does that actually change the psychology of the local church? If people keep showing up to do things for them, what happens in their minds?
It creates what researchers call the hidden logic of dependency.
The hidden logic.
It's a fundamental shift in expectations. Over time, as Western teams parachute in year after year with their pristine equipment and their endless enthusiasm.
And their huge budgets.
Right. The host congregation starts to subconsciously believe a lie. They start to believe that the best teaching, the best strategic planning, the best youth programs, and the best funding must always come from somewhere else.
So they stop looking inward.
Exactly.
They stop taking inventory of the gifts and the resources that are already sitting in their own pews, and they just start looking outward at the horizon, waiting for the next plane to land.
They stop asking the essential question of all community development, which is, what has God given us to do right here with what we have?
And they replace it with what?
They replace it with, who is coming to help us do it?
Man, that is a complete reorientation of trust.
It is. And what it results in is borrowed maturity.
Borrowed maturity.
Yeah. And the problem with borrowed maturity is that it has a very short shelf life.
Because it's not theirs.
The moment the visiting team packs up their bags and heads to the airport, the energy in the host church evaporates. Because the confidence, the momentum, the skills, all of it belong to the visitors. None of it belonged to the locals.
Okay, my mind immediately goes to a parent helping their child with a science fair project.
Oh, that is the perfect analogy.
If you have kids, you've seen this dynamic.
Oh, absolutely.
A fourth grader has to build a volcano, and the parent steps in because they want the project to look perfect, or they want the kid to get a good grade, or honestly, they just genuinely want to be helpful.
They love their kid.
Right. So the parent takes over. They build this elaborate, perfectly scaled, working papier-mâché volcano.
Complete with real smoke, yes.
The project goes to the fair, and it wins a blue ribbon. It looks fantastic.
And everyone applauds. The parents get to take pictures.
Right. But what actually happened in that exchange, the child learned absolutely nothing about science.
Nothing at all.
They didn't learn how to mix chemicals. They didn't learn how to build a structure. But far worse than that, the child internalizes a very dangerous belief.
Which is?
I am not capable of doing real science unless an adult swoops in and does it for me.
Oof.
The parent's desire to, quote-unquote, help actually robbed the child of their own agency and their own development.
That captures the dynamic flawlessly. And it highlights the incredibly seductive power of being needed on the part of the visitor.
We love being needed.
We really do. Let's
Yeah.
be honest about human nature. We enjoy arriving as the answer to someone else's problem.
It's an ego boost.
It feels intoxicating to be the hero with the resources. The host church feels honored by the attention. The volunteers feel spiritually enlarged. Everyone takes great photos in front of the volcano. But we have to recognize a hard truth. Being needed is not the same thing as being faithful.
Say that again. Being needed is not the same as being faithful.
It really isn't.
That is the core takeaway.
True humility in any kind of partnership or mission means actively working to make yourself less indispensable over time.
You want to work yourself out of a job.
Exactly. Your goal should be your own obsolescence. If a visiting team arrives, completes a task incredibly efficiently, but leaves the local church feeling less confident and less skilled than before they arrived,
Then what?
then the ministry might have been highly productive in the short term, but it was incredibly destructive in the long term.
Okay, so if the current model doing things for people creates this toxic dependency and robs communities of their agency, what is the actual alternative?
That's the million-dollar question.
If I am a listener right now who genuinely wants to help, how do I partner with a community without accidentally dominating them?
It requires a massive shift in posture. It means moving from the mindset of doing for to the posture of coming alongside.
Doing for versus coming alongside. And how does that shift actually begin?
It begins with the very first question a team asks before they even pack a bag.
Before they even buy tickets.
Right. Instead of arriving in a community and asking, what can we do to help? A team that is coming alongside asks, what is already happening here and how can we strengthen it?
What is already happening here? That is a totally different lens.
It changes everything.
It treats local believers as competent equals, not as pity projects to be managed.
Exactly.
The research calls this the ministry of recognition.
I love that phrase.
Me too. It's the profound recognition that the Holy Spirit, or whatever force of good you believe in, is not sitting around in a developing nation twiddling its thumbs, just waiting for wealthy Westerners to arrive before things can finally start happening.
Right. The movement is already there. The local leaders are already doing the work. What's fascinating here is the contrast between what we might call the heroic outsider and the posture of coming alongside.
Explain that contrast.
Well, paternalism is a tricky concept. We often think of paternalism as harsh, colonial, or overtly domineering.
Like a 19th century colonial governor barking orders.
Exactly. But paternalism today isn't usually harsh. Most of the time, it wears a very warm smile and brings a box of much-needed medical supplies.
It looks like a youth group.
It does. But if that warm, smiling assistance carries the underlying assumption that the outsider ultimately knows best, it silently demotes the local church.
It demotes them to the role of spectators in their own spiritual lives.
Sadly, yes.
But let's get practical. Let's break this down into the real world. What do the mechanics of coming alongside actually look like?
Sure.
Because it sounds nice in theory, but when you hit the ground, how is it different?
The research gives a brilliant comparative example to illustrate exactly this. Let's call it the story of two teams.
All right, lay it out for us.
Let's look at Team 1. Team 1 represents the traditional heroic outsider model.
Okay, the standard trip.
They arrive in a rural village with a detailed checklist, abundant financial resources, and a very strong, predetermined sense of what needs to happen.
They have a plan.
Let's say they're there to build a youth center. They wake up early, they work incredibly hard, they swing hammers all day.
Getting it done.
They finish the construction project ahead of schedule, they take photos, everyone cheers, they cry at the airport, and they fly home.
I mean, that sounds like a standard successful trip.
On the surface, yes. But let's look at the mechanics of what happened to the locals.
Okay.
When Team 1 leaves, the local church feels displaced. Their own local plans, their own daily rhythms were completely suspended to accommodate the visitors' aggressive timeline.
Because the visitors were on the clock.
Right. And the local believers didn't learn how to source the materials or manage the labor. So now, they feel dependent on another team coming back next year to maintain the building or start the next phase.
So they got a building.
They received a building, yes, but they did not receive strength.
Man. Okay, so contrast that with Team 2. Team 2 represents coming alongside.
Right. Team 2 arrives in that exact same village, but their approach is totally different. The mechanics are inverted.
How?
Before they ever swing a hammer, before they open a single box of supplies, they sit down in a circle with the local elders and community leaders, and they just listen.
They just listen.
They ask what the locals have already begun. They identify the skills and the gifts that are already present in the congregation. Maybe there's a local carpenter. Maybe there's a local teacher.
And I imagine that sitting in that circle, waiting for the locals to speak first, is incredibly awkward for a team of typo Westerners who are used to being in charge.
Oh, it's excruciating for them.
It probably feels like they're wasting time, like, we only have 10 days, we need to start building.
Exactly. It feels wildly inefficient to the Western mind. What does it feel like to not swing a hammer for the first 3 days of your trip?
It feels like failure.
It feels like failure.
Mm.
But it is actually the hard work of building trust.
Yeah.
And then crucially, when Team 2 finally starts working, they work under local direction.
Wow, under local direction.
The local carpenter is the foreman. The visiting architect is taking orders from the local leader. They provide the funding or the muscle that might be missing, but they absolutely refuse to replace local leadership.
The optics are totally different.
Yes. And when Team 2 leaves, the emotional aftermath is completely inverted.
What do they leave behind?
They leave behind confidence. The locals look at the finished youth center and say, we built this, we managed this. The visitors just helped us get over the finish line.
So the ministry clearly belongs to the locals.
Exactly.
If we look at the theological root of this, it ties beautifully to the concept of the incarnation.
It really does.
The idea of Jesus taking on human form. He didn't dominate humanity from a safe, pristine distance. He didn't fly in, fix everything with a snap of his fingers, and fly out.
He could have, but he didn't.
Right. He came near, he took on flesh. He lived in a specific, dusty town for 30 years. He served, he listened, and then he entrusted the ongoing work of the kingdom to very ordinary, highly flawed local people.
And delegate.
He didn't build a movement that required his physical, earthly presence to manage every detail forever.
That is the ultimate model. Coming alongside is not just a polite mission strategy to make people feel good. It is a profoundly Christ-like way of interacting with the world.
Okay, so understanding this posture, sitting in the circle, waiting, listening, submitting to local leadership, is incredibly inspiring.
It is.
But if I'm a pastor or a missions director, how do I actually plan for this? Because you can't just buy 20 plane tickets, show up in Guatemala, and wing it.
No, definitely not.
Coming alongside requires letting the local church become the actual architect of the mission. And that means the sending church has to ask themselves some very, very uncomfortable questions before they ever ask for a single donation.
This brings us to what the research calls the architecture of partnership.
The architecture of partnership.
And the foundational rule of this architecture is mutual submission.
Mutual submission.
The host church cannot just be treated as a passive receiving station that opens its doors to whatever the visitors feel inspired to do. The host church must actively co-architect the work.
Meaning what exactly?
They have to help define the actual goals, assign the specific tasks, dictate the timing, and decide how success will be measured.
It requires a severe theological discipline. Let's role play this for a second.
Let's do it.
Let's say I'm a youth pastor. I have 30 high school kids. We want to go do something impactful next summer. How do I vet this? What are the actual criteria I need to use to decide if a trip should happen?
The first critical criteria to establish is geography. You have to ask, why this specific place?
Why this place?
Are you trying to go there because your church has discerned a true long-term strategic connection? Have you been partnering with this community for years?
Okay.
Or are you going just because it's a tropical, exotic destination that will look fantastic in the youth group promotional video?
Ouch. Okay, so geography isn't just about a fun backdrop.
Definitely not.
Let's say we have a real connection to a community in Mexico. We've known the pastor for 5 years. What's the next hurdle?
The next hurdle is timing. You have to ask, why now?
Well, because it's July. My high school kids are out of school, and I need a major event for the summer calendar.
And that right there is a massive point of friction in global missions.
Why is that?
The kingdom of God and the needs of a local community in Mexico are not scheduled by the convenience of the American school calendar.
Oh, wow.
You have to find out if July actually aligns with the local rhythms of the host community. Maybe July is their harvest season and everyone is working 14-hour days in the fields.
So hosting us would be terrible for them.
Hosting 30 teenagers would be a disaster. Sometimes the host church needs to say, now is not a good time. And the sending church has to have the humility to accept that and stay home.
Okay, I see that. So let's say the timing miraculously works out. What's next?
Next is competence. Why this specific team?
Because they are enthusiastic. They really want to help. They raise the money through bake sales.
But enthusiasm does not equal competence.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
It is. If the host community needs a complex electrical grid installed in their new clinic, taking 30 high school kids who have never held a wire stripper is not helpful. It's actually a liability.
So true.
You have to ask if the team has the actual tangible skills needed by the host.
So we've vetted the place, the timing, and the skills.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
There's one final question, and it is the most piercing one of all. Who actually asked for this?
Man, that is a heavy question.
Because usually no one asked for it.
Right, because if I'm being honest, as the youth pastor in this scenario, I probably came up with the idea for the trip while I was sitting in my air-conditioned office in Ohio. I decided my kids needed a cultural experience.
And that is the problem. Did the local believers in Mexico actually request this specific project?
Did they invite us?
Exactly. Do they say, we have a critical need, please come help us? Or did you, the visitor, invent a need so your team would have something to do when they arrived?
Asking who asked for this is like a knife that just completely severs paternalism.
It really does.
It prevents the sending church from colonizing the host's calendar with imported manufactured programs. If you can't point to a specific local leader who initiated the request, you shouldn't be booking flights.
You are assuming a need rather than responding to a genuine invitation.
To illustrate the difference between these two approaches, the manufactured trip versus the requested partnership, the research uses a metaphor that is incredibly striking.
The campfire versus the kiln.
Yes. Break that down for us.
Think about a campfire. A poorly planned, unilateral mission trip one, driven by the sender's enthusiasm, operates exactly like a campfire.
Lots of heat and light.
Exactly. It creates a massive amount of heat and light very quickly. People gather around it, they sing songs, they feel immense warmth, they share emotional testimonies.
It feels amazing in the moment.
But a campfire burns through its fuel rapidly. Because it's open to the air, the heat dissipates instantly. And when it's done, you are left with nothing but cold ashes.
A lot of trips are campfires. They are spectacular, but they leave nothing structural behind. So what is the alternative?
A well-planned strategy, built on genuine partnership and local architecture, operates like a kiln.
A kiln, what for pottery?
Exactly. A kiln works entirely differently. It is enclosed, it is slow, the heat is steady and controlled.
You can't roast marshmallows over a kiln.
No, it doesn't look as dramatic from the outside. You can't sit around it and sing songs.
Wait.
But it is intentionally designed to take raw clay and shape it into something hardened and durable that will last for generations.
Wow.
Many mission trips are campfires. But the church, and any effective charity, is called to be a kiln. True mission work must belong to the future, not just the present moment of emotional excitement.
Okay, so let's say a church has done the hard work. They've answered the hard questions. They have local permission. They're building a kiln, not a campfire.
They're ready to go.
Once a trip is actually justified, the entire execution of the trip has to change. If the mission is not just a travel program, but an actual discipleship process, that process has to start long before departure, and it has to continue long after the return flight.
The trip is just the middle part.
Right. Let's look at how we redesign the mechanics of the trip into 3 phases: preparation, debriefing, and follow-up.
Let's start with preparation.
Okay.
The standard model of prep usually involves handing out a packing list, making sure everyone gets their malaria pills, and organizing fundraising car washes.
The logistics.
But true preparation has to move way beyond logistics. It must include rigorous historical and cultural learning.
What does that actually mean, reading a Wikipedia page on the plane?
No, it means deep engagement. Teams need to understand the complex history of the place they are visiting. They need to understand the cultural memory.
That makes sense.
And crucially, they have to acknowledge previous harms that might have been done by outsiders, by colonial powers, or even by previous missionaries in that exact region.
You have to know the baggage.
You cannot walk into a community blindly without understanding the baggage your very presence might represent.
And part of that preparation has to be setting brutally honest expectations for the team.
Absolutely.
The leader needs to look the volunteers in the eye and say, look, you might be totally misunderstood while we are there. You are probably going to be physically exhausted. The food might make you sick.
You might be bored.
Right. And you might end up doing incredibly humble, boring tasks like sorting files or digging a trench that will never, ever make it into a good slide presentation on Sunday morning.
And paradoxically, setting those low expectations liberates the team.
It takes the pressure off.
It completely frees them from the psychological pressure of having to perform a dramatic spiritual rescue. They don't have to be the heroes. They can just show up, be human, and serve.
Just be present.
But As critical as that preparation is,
Hmm.
what happens after the trip is arguably where the most important work takes place,
Hmm.
the debriefing.
So, what does this all mean for the return trip? It means the airport terminal is not the end of the journey.
Not at all.
Imagine a participant goes on the trip, they cry on the mission field, they have this huge emotional breakthrough about global poverty. But then they fly home, they unpack, and they don't change a single thing about their life.
They go right back to normal.
They don't change their local generosity habits, they don't change how they treat their neighbors, they don't alter their prayer life. If nothing changes at home, the trip was just an emotional consumable. It was spiritual tourism masquerading as charity.
That is why the debriefing is so vital. The debrief is the specific mechanism where raw experience is translated into actual, durable wisdom.
From feeling to doing.
It's the process of moving a team from simply stating I felt sad or I felt inspired to stating I must now obey or I must now change.
Okay.
And the research is very clear that a proper debrief cannot just be a highlight reel of favorite memories. It has to include confession.
Confession. Like sitting in a circle and admitting where things went wrong, that sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, but it's essential. The team needs a safe, structured space to confess where they failed.
Like admitting they were impatient.
Yes. Where did they assume too much? Where did they accidentally act with cultural pride or impatience? Where did they talk over a local leader?
It's holding up a mirror.
They need to answer fundamental questions. What did we actually learn about God's character? What ugly things did we learn about ourselves and our own entitlement?
Wow.
What beautiful things did we learn about the host church? And most importantly, what does obedience look like now in our daily lives on a random Tuesday in November?
And that leads directly into follow-up.
Hmm.
The research points out that follow-up is necessary to prevent what it calls spiritual amnesia.
Spiritual amnesia.
Because let's face it, human beings are incredibly forgetful creatures. We have this amazing paradigm-shifting experience. We fly home, we go back to our jobs, the laundry piles up, the kids get sick, and 3 weeks later, the urgency is completely gone.
It fades so fast.
Follow-up is about cultivating fruit that actually remains.
No, we have to fight against a very dangerous assumption in mission work. The myth of completion.
The idea that we went, we painted the school, we checked the box, we're done.
Exactly. That mindset perfectly serves the conscience of the sender. It makes us feel accomplished, but it completely ignores the biblical pattern of discipleship.
Think about the Apostle Paul.
Right. He didn't just visit a city, preach a sermon, check a box on his itinerary, and forget about them.
No, he agonized over them.
He agonized over their long-term growth. He wrote them complex letters. He returned to visit them years later. He sent co-laborers like Timothy and Titus to check on them.
It was relational.
True mission is an ongoing, messy relationship. It is not an isolated transactional event.
To ensure this entire redesign process is actually working, to make sure we are building kilns and not campfires, the sending church has to fundamentally overhaul how it measures success.
Metrics have to change.
If we aren't measuring by how many walls we painted or how many people cried, what are we measuring? We have to evaluate based on what remains, not what was felt. We have to measure fruit over feeling.
And that means evaluation is no longer just an administrative task for the church finance board to review once a year.
Right.
Evaluation becomes a vital spiritual discipline.
Yeah.
We have to ask, what lasting fruit was produced? And we have to be brave enough to ask the most terrifying question of all. What might we have weakened?
That question gives me chills. What did we weaken?
It's a scary thought.
Because it forces you to stop looking at your good intentions and start looking at the unintended consequences of your actions.
Right.
Did we weaken local stewardship? For example, did we bring so much outside money for the new roof that the local congregation completely stopped tithing and giving to their own church?
That happens a lot.
Did we weaken local initiative because we did all the strategic planning for them, so now they just wait for us to tell them what to do next?
It is the hardest question to ask, but it is the most necessary for doing no harm.
You have to ask it.
The ultimate test of any short-term mission strategy, the litmus test for whether you are helping or hurting, is this. What would remain if we stopped sending teams next year?
What would survive?
If the answer is nothing, if the programs would fold and the buildings would crumble without your physical presence, then you haven't built discipleship. You've built an addiction to your presence.
And here is where the research presents its most crucial evaluation metric.
Right.
To know if you've built an addiction or a true partnership, you have to find out, what would the local partners honestly say?
Yeah,
But I have to push back hard here. I have to play the skeptic.
knew it.
How on earth do you actually get honest feedback from a host community? Let's go back to our power dynamic.
Good money problem.
If you are the wealthy church from America or Europe, and you are bringing $10,000 in aid to a rural village, the local pastor is heavily economically incentivized to be polite.
Of course he is.
If you hand him a survey and ask, "How did we do?" he is going to tell you it was fantastic. He's going to say your team was a blessing because he needs you to come back next year. That power dynamic doesn't just vanish because you asked a nice question. How do you get past that?
You are entirely correct. The power dynamic is massive, and it doesn't disappear. Getting honest feedback requires immense, sustained humility and intentionality from the sending church.
It can't be an afterthought.
You cannot just hand out a survey at the airport. You have to actively, relentlessly create a space over years where the host knows they can speak truth without penalty.
How do you prove that to them?
You have to explicitly tell them and then prove it with your actions. Our funding and our friendship are not contingent on you flattering us. In fact, if you don't tell us where we are messing up, we cannot be true partners.
We need your criticism.
We need you to critique us because we want to serve your vision better. You have to earn the right to hear their honest criticism. A trip measured by feeling asks the volunteers, were we moved?
But a trip measured by fruit looks the local partners in the eye and asks, were you supported in ways that endure? And please tell us the truth.
Yes.
If a church can actually get to that level of honesty, it requires a total overhaul of their core purpose. The research gives an incredible example of moving a church's mission statement from vague goodwill to theological clarity.
What's the difference?
Well, vague goodwill sounds like this. We want to go to the nations to be a blessing, share love, and change lives.
It sounds nice, but it means nothing.
Exactly. Theological clarity sounds like this. We exist to quietly support local pastors, reinforce existing local discipleship, and serve a strategy shaped entirely by our host partners.
That is radically different.
That second statement is a contract. It holds you accountable. The first one just makes you feel warm and fuzzy.
Exactly. The second statement shifts the entire center of gravity away from the visitor's emotional experience and places it entirely on the local church's endurance and agency.
We have covered so much ground today.
We really have.
We've talked about turnstiles and campfires and the terrifying creep of dependency. To summarize this journey, short-term missions are not inherently evil.
No, they are not a lost cause.
When they are redeemed, when they are stripped of our ego, our need to be the hero, and our hidden paternalism, they are incredibly powerful tools for global unity.
The goal is simply to move from impulse to intention.
From frantic activity to strategic alignment.
And most importantly, from the toxic habit of doing things for people to the beautiful, difficult work of coming alongside them as equal partners.
It is a fundamental shift from treating communities as projects to be managed to treating them as capable, dignified equals.
It requires massive patience.
Deep, uncomfortable listening.
And it requires the willingness of the visitor to take the lower seat. But the fruit it produces, a resilient, confident, locally led community that doesn't need you anymore, is worth all the discomfort of the transition.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. It builds on the research's heavy emphasis on the dignity of ordinary local faithfulness.
The quiet work.
We've spent this entire hour talking about the intense allure of crossing international borders to find spiritual significance, the thrill of the airplane, the exotic location, the dramatic photos in front of the painted wall.
A turnstile.
But if true mission is actually about long-term, unglamorous, patient, quiet partnership, look at your own immediate surroundings right now. Look at your neighborhood. Look at your workplace.
Are you using the fantasy of a dramatic cross-cultural rescue mission abroad to subconsciously avoid the messy, slow, and totally unphotogenic work of helping your literal next-door neighbor?
If you cannot be a faithful, patient listening partner to the people living on your own street, what makes you think boarding a Boeing 747 will suddenly turn you into one?
That is the ultimate mirror. True mission work always begins exactly where you stand.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this conversation encourages you to reconsider what true partnership looks like, not just across the globe, but in every single area of your life. And remember, the landscape of helping might be murky, but we don't need clean engineering. We just need to come alongside.